Hey guys, today I'm gonna tell you how THK Bonus got cracked down as solo Ironman in January 2022. The story starts back in September 2021. I noticed sort of a weird challenge was getting popular. That challenge is called Solo Ultimate Ironman, but people called it Solo Ironman for short. The principle is simple. You create a character in Guild Wars Prophecies and you need to complete the whole campaign without player interactions at all and no henchmen, even though rules may vary depending on what you like. After watching some people attending it, with success or not, I decided to give it a try as Necromancer Mesmer. My rules was following: no rune trader, no storage, no trading with other players, no material trader, basically nothing that other players can have an influence on. After 2 weeks, I managed to beat the last mission. It was overall a wonderful experience where you needed to be creative in terms of builds and strategy in order to succeed. It felt good for a few days, I guess, but it wasn't enough. I wanted to do more difficult content to experience the same feeling of accomplishment once again. And what's the next step when you've done every mission? Do every bonus. There are some hard ones, like Dragon Slayer, Thirsty River, Hell's Precipice, and obviously Thunderhead Keep. At the time, I and the whole solo community thought this was impossible. Without having a particular goal in mind, I gave a shot at Thirsty River. At first it was hard to believe that it was even possible. You basically need to clear a whole room in less than around 12 minutes while keeping that guy alive. While an average solo player would take maybe 1 hour to clear it with care, after a bunch of very careful planning and training on another character, I managed to beat it in 2 tries on my solo Ironman character. It felt great and was the first hard bonus I did on my Necromancer. At that moment, it was clear. I wanted to beat every bonus and become the first ever protector of Tyria. I did not want to talk too much about it, because if it was impossible, I would most likely feel sad to never be able to achieve that goal. Nonetheless, I started working on builds to beat the remaining 3 missions. Dragon Slayer was hard, but not impossible. Grant's balance does wonder against Glint, and the rest of the build was somewhat similar to the one I've used when I did the mission normally. Hell's Precipice was an hard one, but I managed to break it down using a mix of curses, blood, inspiration, and domination. At the end of the day, I was able to reach 24 over 25 bonus and only 1 remained, Thunderhead Keep. Let's first take a look at THK the intended way, the one you would use with heroes and henchmen. The mission begins with Jalis that you need to keep alive. If at any point Jalis dies, the mission is instantly over. A normal run would kill all the enemies along the way, reach the city, and clear it, even though it's not necessary. Then Jalis opens a gate, and after fighting some Mesmers and Necromancer groups, you will reach the fort. You will then clear the fort. Once it's done, a cinematic triggers, and Jalis will stand at the top of the fort for the rest of the mission. You will need to defeat, in that order, waves of giants, a dwarf boss, then waves of Mursats, and waves of White Mantle. Then a Mursat boss ultimately kill Dorian and its squad. The last step is to talk to Chalice and you are done with the mission. Now let's check out what it looks like in solo Ironman 7. The path may vary depending on your profession, but it's overall the same headlines over and over, so let's get into it. First, you will need to keep Chalice alive at all times, and it's impossible to fight your way through with him, he will just die at some point. The only known way is to get rid of him. To do this, the most common strategy is to let him and the dwarves battle the first group of herders while you run away. This part is tricky because you don't want Chalice to die to the herders, but you also don't want the dwarves and Chalice to kill the herders too quickly, since you will need to deal with the golems on the way before running out of compass. This involves a bit of RNG and some tricks that can be used in order to, well, reduce that RNG. You will then need to run to the Avikaras pass. They do have Savage Slash, so be mindful to not use your skills while too close to them. Other than that, they don't deal a lot of damage. The next step will be to make sure Chalice is stuck in the right spot, and deal with the Stone Summit. Avikaras and Stone Summit are enemies of each other, so you can pull the Stone Summit into the Avikaras. There is also a dwarf boss in that area. The next step will be to get to the city. Pretty standard stuff, just kill foes along the way to get there. The only problem is there is a door and Chalice is supposed to open it. So how can you get to the fort? Well, there is something called Gate Glitch. It involves using a melee attacker, stick him close to the door, and walk between him and the door. The game will at some point glitch you out of the door if done properly. Some side note about the AI: the skills mobs use depend on the weapon you are wearing, and in the case of herders they won't use Devastating Hammer as long as you don't hold the weapon. Once it's done, get quickly to the safe spot, because a patrol with Mesmer is coming to you. There are a lot of things to say about this specific area, like some line of sight glitches where you cannot get hit by projectiles, but let's move on. Heretics are a pain for any solo runner, and one of the greatest challenges of solo Ironman. They do have Control Phantasm, Crippling Anguish, Shatter Enchantment, and Illusion of Haste. Also, there is a herder in every group, which makes it even more complicated. Some heretics are what we call dreamy. It's a special kind of aggro where heretics will have the tendency to move more to make sure they hit you with their attacks. Once the heretics are done, it's time to clear up the fort and abuse one last glitch. So here is a mapping of every group in the fort. There are two events tied to that mapping. The first one being the boss timer. It triggers when all the groups with a red circle died. The other one triggers when all the groups in the fort died, and is linked to the cutscene. So what happens if you only kill groups that have a red circle? Well, the boss timer starts, so we'll need to deal with the dwarf boss, the Mursat boss, and waves, etc. up to Dorian, but the doors are closed and Chalice is still in his safe spot at the beginning of the mission because we haven't killed every NPC in the fort. Once it's done, you can either glitch out with an herder to kill everything from the outside while the foes are trapped outside of the fort, or stay inside the fort and kill everything while taking your time. Once Dorian is killed, else run back to Chalice if you have an herder to recruit the gate, or kill the last groups in the fort in order to trigger the cutscene which opens the door, then talk to Chalice. This ends the mission for a solo Ironman character without bonus. Okay, well, so far so good. Now that we know how the solo Ironman works, what's so hard about the bonus? The problem is the following: the torches only spawn once a cutscene is triggered, spawning Chalice on top of the fort. For that reason, you cannot trigger the boss timer, kill everything up to Dorian, trigger the cutscene, light up the beacons, and then talk to Jalis, because the game considers the bonus failed half an hour ago, 1 minute after you have killed all the groups with a red circle. Nightquist and I worked quite hard to overcome that issue. We've tried to glitch through the first door with a minion and hope something magical would happen. We've tried to make Jalis move out of the top of the fort to get him to a safe spot, but Jalis clearly doesn't want to move. After all our failed attempts, it was time for a realization. If I wanted to do the bonus, I would need to do it the normal way, meaning triggering the boss timer and the cutscene at the same time and defeating all the waves of enemies. I started training on another Necromancer character, using heroes to get up to the fort so I could train the specific section. After more than 20 attempts trying to contain the fools inside the fort, and maybe 10 more attempts outside, I gave up in November 2021. After a few weeks of inactivity and a feeling of dissatisfaction, Nightquist started talking about how good Ether Renewal was as Elementalist. The idea felt very strong and we basically came up to the same build, so let me break it down for you. There are some heavy domination magic in the form of Wastrel, Empathy, Backfire or Direction, Power Spike. Kinetic Armor is a league on its own. It provides a ton of armor and renews every time you use a skill. It synergizes very well with Wastrel. Ether Renewal and Aura of Restoration gives you a lot of energy and health back if you use a skill, and Windborne is used to run faster. To not waste time, I asked if someone having an Elementalist could make a little demonstration of it, as I did not have an Elementalist at the time. After seeing what this build was capable of, I was quite sure that if there is something that can beat THK Bonus, well, it was this build. After the Necromancer trip, this is the beginning of a second journey, the one to THK Bonus and ultimately Protector of Tyria. I decided to create a new solo Ironman character to achieve my goals, an Elementalist. I needed to rethink all the bonus I've done as Necromancer, and find a way to deal with the pre-fort section of THK. At the time, no one ever tried Elementalist Mesmer, since heretics do have Shatter Enchantment. The only known way was to play Elementalist Monk with some healing and air magic, and play a very long, steady, boring mission. Let's start with the first part. After beating Prophecies as Elementalist, I decided to go for the different bonus. In the meantime, I leveled up another Elementalist called Non-Solo Ironman for obvious reasons, in order to practice the past 4 section of THK. First off, Let's start with Thirsty River. That mission was a breeze, since I knew a good strategy already as Necromancer, and Elementalist was the same but better. Good. The second one was Dragon Slayer, in which you need to kill 6 bosses to defeat Glint, whom uses a skill overcasting you by 10 points if you use any skill costing energy during its duration. For this one, my Necromancer used Grant's Balance, and in this case playing Elementalist Necromancer with Grant's Balance did not feel like a good plan. While helping me get my non-solo Ironman through Dragon Slayer, Nightquist suggested to play Elementalist Ranger with a pet. One of his skills was Conjure Lightning, and we took that opportunity to check out his build against Glint. The build clearly struggled to kill Glint. It was also certainly gonna be hard to even get to Glint in the first place, since you are supposed to slay 6 bosses beforehand. For some reasons, I started duending Glint at some point. That made us think, what about using Conjure and wounding Glint to death while dodging its attacks? Nightquist tried it out, and this time it clearly felt like it was doing something. After shifting my bested build a little bit and got lucky by dropping a superior air magic rune, I was able to take down the mission. The other missions felt like a breeze. Hell's Precipice was way easier than I thought since, thanks again to Nightquist, he noticed that imps won't use Mind Burn if I hold a high energy set. The point is, the AI will only use it if they have more energy than I do, and they have a base 80 energy. The mission was still harder to Necromancer strips, but I've managed to do it. After completing all the missions, and 24 over 25 bonus on my Elementalist, it was time to take down THK. The first annoying part is to run up to the fort. First, the heretics. We noticed that they only use shatter if your health is between 30 and 70%. One way to go about it is to purposefully reduce your HP under 70%, use all your enchantments, and then to not spam too much in order to remain under 70% while also stay above 30. I first thought I needed a vampiric weapon to do that, but it's such a rare drop. I've decided to let the heretics degen me and start using enchantments when I'm under 70%. On one side, vampiric. It's slow, vampiric is a rare drop, but you have access to kinetic armor during the whole fight. On the other hand, let them degen you out. You don't need vampiric, you don't have access to kinetic during the whole fight, but since the healing from E-Renewal and Aura of Restoration is quite good, I thought that approach would work. So that's one issue solved. Now let's get to the juicy part. The second issue is the 2 groups of 2 armors and bow standing at the Mursad spawn point. They're already there before you even start the boss timer. Why are they so annoying? Well, after spawning, every Mursad does a little back and forth. It means that if I'm taking too much pressure, I can fall back, force the Mursad to do this back and forth, and then fight again once the pressure is released. The 2 groups of armor and bow are unfortunately on the way, and I won't have time to deal with them once the boss timer starts. So I need to deal with them before that. How do I get out of the fort with the gates closed? By glitching a herder. The problem is now the following. There is no way to glitch back inside since there are no melees with an high enough aggro range outside of the fort. To solve this second issue, the plan is to kill everything but some necromancers and 1 herder. These necromancers have a red circle in the chart, which means that if that group dies last, it will both trigger the bonus timer and cutscene at the same time, which is what I need. I glitch out by using the herder and I kill him right away. If I don't, I'm at risk of seeing him running back and never coming close to the door again. He has to die in order for the cutscene to trigger. Once it's done, I kill the Mursad groups. Luckily enough, the necromancers I've left alive can be reached outside of the fort and won't run away since they are casters. This way, I trigger the cutscene and I've killed the Mursad groups at the spawn before triggering the bonus timer. Now comes the last issue before the tricky part. The white mantle food starts spawning as soon as the dwarf boss dies. This event occurs if you are close to the middle of the fort. By running away far enough, roughly at the Mursat spawn point and up the hill there, this event doesn't continue anymore. Even if the white mantle gets smacked by the bonus Mursats, discontinuing the white mantle spawns makes the run revolves around way less RNG. One white mantle could sneak close to Jalis or even kill a bonus Mursat bow from outside of the wall. An important note regarding the bonus. Lighting up the beacons will trigger bonus Mursats. That's two groups of 2 armor and bow coming from each side of the fort. They are the only foes not running towards Jalis, they roam in the middle of the fort and they are hostile to every other foes. The last issue is Dorian. His group has some random white mantle, which can include Sycophants. There are Mesmers with Guild and Shatter Enchantment, so pretty much everything I hate. Fortunately, I let the bonus Mursa deal with them for me. So that's roughly the planning. Now let's get to the actual run. With my fresh non-solo Ironman ready, it was time to take down THK in practice run. Knowing it is possible was a relief, and only a matter of time until we crushed it. On my practice character, I purposefully made my gear close to identical to my solo character. A minor vigor rune, full blessed insignias, a minor energy storage rune, and similar weapons. After beating the mission once in these conditions, I needed to do it on my solo Ironman. Completing the bonus, even on a practice character, has required a lot of efforts. To even have a chance at it, we needed to gather data. Know every wave of enemy, know every passing, the timer at which they trigger, etc. What are the different possible combinations of enemies? What class is the caster accompanying the boss? After some extensive research through VARTs, Nightquist made a whole breakdown of the different waves. Yes, these 30 plus runs as necromancers weren't there for nothing. Blue means the group goes to the west side of the fort, red means the group goes to the east side of the fort. I then confirmed the chart with more data, added that the caster tied to the boss cannot be a mesmer. To make the run more manageable solo and to know what's coming up next, I asked if Nightquist could copilot me during the whole run. His very important job will be to tell me which wave is gonna come up next and how much time I have before it. This way I could have a very nice control over the game. First, let's have a look at the Mursats and how to play against every profession. Jet bows have determined shot. If you dodge it, it recharges all of their skills. Since I play with Restral, I want them to use as few skills as possible. Tanking determined shot on purpose is a good plan. It also have Oath shot. This one recharges everything if it lands and put every skill on cooldown for 10 seconds if it misses. This one you clearly want to dodge. Jade armors have devastating hammer and wild blow. They have the same AI as the Herder, so if you don't hold a weapon, they won't use devastating hammer. Elementalist Mursats have Shell Lightning, Thunderclap, Enervating Charge. They only use Enervating Charge if you hold a martial weapon. Thunderclap rubs, so take care. The cooldown of the skills is short and Elementalist Mursat is the most common caster in THK. Backfire truly is a killer against them. They deal quite a lot of damage. Necromancer Mursats are one of the most annoying Mursats to deal with due to their insane survivability. They use Brood Renewal as soon as they lose any HP. Life Transfer is also a huge source of healing. Mesmer Mursats have Energy Surge, Ether Feast, and Power Leak. They use Energy Surge on recharge, Ether Feast if you have more than 50% of your energy, and P-Leak time to time. Due to their high fast casting, it's very possible to get rupted on one of your quarter-second skills. This is by far the most annoying Mursat to deal with, especially since it can prevent you from killing other Mursats and the game can snowball out of control if you cannot kill in time. Let's now take a look at the different critical points of that part of the mission. The Dwarf boss is all good. The Mesmer is a bit annoying because of Shatter Enchantment. Overall, just kill the giants from inside of the fort and let the Mursats kill the Dwarf boss or kill it yourself if need be. You don't want your bonus Mursat to fight it for too long. Ideally, I would like to have all my Mursats alive at the very end to have an easy kill on Dorian. Next up, run to the spawn point. There is an initial 4-man spawn with 1 bow, 2 armor or bow and 1 elementalist. You have quite some time to kill them and bows don't deal a lot of damage. You can also hide behind the hill. So far so good. Next, there are some waves and here comes the first truly critical moment, which is the Mursat boss. To trigger the next event, the boss and his accompanying caster must die. There are also a bunch of spawns triggered by the dwarf boss death in the first place. Since you don't want to deal with the mobs coming from the death of the dwarf and the death of the Mursat at the same time, just wait carefully until all the spawns from the dwarf boss death are killed and then kill the boss or the caster that you have left alive. All the Mursat boss can be used at my advantage since they have natural resistance and I do play with Wastrel Rory. I can use it as a Wastrel Ball where everyone in this range melts due to a crazy DPS to his adjacent targets. The Mesmer boss is annoying, all the other bosses are perfectly fine to deal with. The next critical moment is way later on. Every wave spawns within a 30 seconds interval, including some exceptions. Some waves are composed of 2 Mursats, and at one specific time, 2 waves of 2 Mursats will spawn, which is very hard to deal with. I might repeat myself, but being too slow to kill the Mursats will lead to a snowball out of control where you will take too much damage, need to back off, and let even more spawns go through. At the end of the mission, stay at distance and let Dorian kill himself to the bonus Mursats. Talk to Jalis and the suffering is over. I've learned quite a lot during these practice runs. First, I started to get some habits regarding my approach to kill certain mobs. Also, I understood that running back to the fort if I was in a bad spot was a bad idea, since it triggered the white mantle and made things worse. All these practice runs were made with one goal in mind: make sure that I could handle the best way possible a situation under very high pressure and that I had the best tools and understanding to do so. One day I had 2 successful runs out of 3. The next day I decided it was time to try it out in a real run, and this is what happened.
Interesting.
Fuck, okay, well, I got it. Ah, my bad. Fuck. I've seen bulls there, and yeah. Okay, saveable.
$30. Now 15 till boss. Five. $15 Ellie. Now you have a lot of time till 2 armor or bow. $30 till armor and bow. After the boss, armor and Ellie and Necro. $15 bow. 30 Ellie. Double bear. First Ellie, Necro. Armor. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. $15. Armor Mesmer, Armor Necro. 10. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bow. 30 Ellie. 20 Dorian. 15 Dorian. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And this is how the story ends. After months of trying, this is how I managed to beat Thunderhead Key Bonus and become the first ever solo Ironman protector of Tyria.